Welcome everyone to My Life, My Business. Wish I was here. And a special welcome to my co host Shanaz. Once again, today she's going to be handling the topic. Last week, she addressed the topic under gender based violence, and it is entitled Bullet for My Valentine. So you can either listen to it on playback on Clubhouse, or you can listen to it on listen to the edited version on the Mufasa Coaching Practice YouTube channel. So, Shanaz, without further ado, I'm going to hand over straight to you.
Thank you. And I know that, it does appear to be a heavy topic, but I sometimes think that if you are to not only have successful relationships, but have successful businesses, then it's really important to kind of include this as part of have a discussion, a frank discussion on gender based violence. And particularly, I think that men have been often not been included in the discourse or the discussion on gender based violence. And I think that so that actually makes it particularly important. And I think, as I said last time, that when you typically think that if you kind of think that actually gender based violence doesn't really affect me, I have to say that that's actually wrong. You'll actually find that whether you are a man or not, or whether you are a business leader or not, or a church leader or any sort of leader, it profoundly affects you, maybe not directly but indirectly. So did you know that they say that something like we spend, when you think of how much we spend in South Africa on gender based violence, it's like in billions. It costs the economy something like 2 billion rand. And so maybe that puts it in perspective to you with for you, because there is an economic cost to gender based violence. So if people are not happy in their relationships, at work, at home, it will affect their productivity. They will take off sick. They will also be, they could, for some women, sadly, they could be injuries. If we look at the other side, for in terms of men, it could also be, things like times off from work. So it does cost the economy quite significantly. Furthermore, as I said like last week, that if we decide that we want to empower women and we want to provide women with jobs, we will make a contribution to the economy. That the one way out of poverty for our country is to ensure that women and girls have understand or have financial security or have an income. And so in that way we can't exclude men from from the discussion. And you actually find that women will make up a large proportion of the hospitality industry. Women also make up a large proportion of the informal trade that goes on in our country, and this makes them particularly vulnerable when it comes to um, things that affect the economy or things that affect them. They first to get be made redundant, for example, or they cannot practice their craft or trade when the economy is affected. So I think if we look at what the gender-based violence costs the economy, then maybe our viewpoint around how involved I am or not will actually change your viewpoint. And as I said, if your heart is concerned with even with poverty, or contributing to our economy, reducing the unemployment rate, you will definitely encounter have encounters with women. And then, just so that you know, that one of the key reasons why women do remain in a violent relationship is due to their financial position. And so, what you find, for example, is that they will remain in the relationship because they do not have a regular source of income. And so they do regard the finances that the partner or the father provides as essential. Also, what you often find is that when couples do separate, there are big financial implications in terms of property, in terms of, home, where does she stay. And I'll give you an example that, what I'm very aware of. If you think of in the rural areas for our farm workers, if they get divorced, the housing actually is usually farmers and farm managers will give the homes, and this can be families who've been for generations on the farms. They will give it to the men. And so if there's a divorce or the relationship ends, then the man will stay in the house and not the woman. And so women will be put off farms, and will be without accommodation when this occurs. So women are particularly, women are particularly vulnerable, and that's why I think last week I mentioned about the feminine, or the femicide, not femicide, that poverty has a gender. And it's poverty, because women are particularly affected. So, and I think that, once you hear these statistics, hopefully that will make you think differently about how you engage with gender based violence and with women. And one of the key aspects then is definitely to provide, to empower women, in help them gain access to regular incomes, to help them, secure employment, gainful employment, as they say, and then also in particularly in leadership positions. And so one of the aspects that that I am going to cover is this is this very interesting, myself as a leader being a female. And I was listening to to Jacques talking about the Enneagram and my personality type, and I was, thinking, reflecting on it. And so one of the issues that, or the areas that I particularly struggle apparently, is that my anger at, the at what I consider the right thing. My anger can alienate people, right? So, so I'm quite aware that, as because I speak often on behalf of women, and maybe, on behalf of women of color and black women, that this can be a challenge, particularly to men of color and black men. And so, and I was kind of wondering about how does one go around that, and how do we, I think, questions to think about: how do we engage more men in this discussion? And I'd like to ask Jacques about this. How do we engage more men in this discussion about gender-based violence, not only then in as leaders and in the workplace, but also how do we engage men in the discussion around gender-based violence in terms of faith-based organizations? What the faith-based organizations have a particularly bad reputation, which I think is actually quite sad. they have a particularly bad reputation for covering up and not knowing how to address not only gender based violence issues, but they don't really encourage female leadership. And they don't know how to manage gender based violence. And often, because there also seems to be this idea that in faith based organizations, whether that's churches or mosques or even and including NPOs, they are male dominated and run by men. And I was wondering, how do we start this conversation, around how do we get more women in leadership positions? Furthermore, how do we get faith-based organizations to engage in discussions on gender-based violence and support both the victims or perpetrators? So I just like so I have a few ideas, but I just wanted to start a conversation because I do want to say that there is a particular issue that many advocates, women particularly, gender-based violence activists and advocates, what we experience is a resistance. But I'm also aware that that we may not be engaging with men in the right way. And while we can do, I'm going to do some research on this, and I'm actually working on it. I just wanted your view, because you've engaged with a lot of men in men's organizations, both at NPO level, but also in faith-based organizations such as churches.
Can't avoid the conversation. And I guess that's what I'm attempting to do, because it's easy just to intellectualize, but not to become emotionally attached to the idea. Because until we do, if we don't reach activist stage as men, I think we will all nod our heads and believe, yeah, something must be done as long as we're not involved. You know, so I think there needs to be a groundswell of passion in this area to get involved, and I'm not too sure how to get there, but that would be my final comments on the topic.
Thank you. Bye.
So thank you, Shanas, and thank you.
Pleasure. Thank you.
All right, chat again. Bye.
Bye.